Wait,
Hi.
this isn't a dance party?
It can always be a dance party.
I love that attitude.
In fact, we have Kid President here with the foundation who makes it a dance party sort of every moment.
Love it.
Thank you for being here.
So honored to be here. Thank all of you for being here.
And for coming. This is really an honor for me. I was telling Laura in the back, you're like my guru, mentor of philanthropy. So it's really an honor for me to interview you.
Bless you. The privilege is mine entirely.
We have here at Dreamforce, we have 137,000 people here this week. We have philanthropy everywhere. On the campus, we just came off from doing a volunteer activity, packing early education materials for Hillary Clinton's organization. And we're just really inspired by, from people like you. And one of the things when I was thinking about what I wanted to ask you, because there's a lot of things that I want to ask you. One is, you've been over a decade, 15 years at Stanford now since you started the program. And I'm just wondering, what inspires you and what keeps you going?
I love that question. There is so much that inspires me. Literally, every single day of my work these last 18 years have been drenched in the most spectacular inspiration. It's something that I experience every single day, being surrounded by this new generation of change makers and future leaders, and my students being in the classroom. My Stanford Business School class just started 3 weeks ago, and being in that classroom is like being in church for me. And at LAF, my operating foundation, my team is made up of former superstar students of mine, and now so many of the social entrepreneurs and colleagues that I have in the philanthropic sector are also former superstar students. So that is extraordinary. But I think that where philanthropy began for me was at home and with my parents. I am beyond blessed to be the daughter of two extraordinary philanthropists. My late mother, Frances, who actually passed away 19 years ago yesterday, was my best friend and my soulmate. And she was this incarnation of radiance. She had a smile for everyone. She was the most selfless person I have ever known. She was an incredible community volunteer. She sat on over 3 dozen nonprofit boards. She was a social entrepreneur, co-founding 2 nonprofits. And she was my philanthropic role model. And then my father, my beloved, extraordinary father, he's my philanthropic hero. He grew up in Inglewood, California, which is a severely economically disadvantaged area in Southern California. His very first trip on an airplane was when Stanford flew him up to recruit him to receive a full basketball scholarship at Stanford. And literally, that was the only reason that he went to college. And what's so beautiful about my father's story is that he went to college because of the generosity of somebody he had never even met. And in turn, in the decade since he graduated, he's literally given hundreds of millions of dollars back to that university that made his life and his career possible. And what's so powerful about my father's philanthropy is that it's actually his non-financial resources that are the most powerful part of his giving, because he deploys his entire portfolio of assets. So his time, his professional networks, his creative vision, his ability to render architectural drawings out of thin air and then make them a reality and get critical physical infrastructure projects built for as few dollars as possible. He is a truly transformational philanthropist. So for me, growing up, giving was just as much of a part of my everyday existence as having dinner together as a family every night. And so that was my notion of normalcy growing up, but it actually wasn't until I was 23 that I truly found my own philanthropic purpose and passion. When I was 23, I was working at a high-tech startup in Silicon Valley. I had just been accepted to Stanford Business School, and 3 weeks later, we found out that my angel mother had cancer. And that day, I quit my job, and I asked Stanford Business School for a deferral, which they so generously gave me. And I began a 20-month journey being my angel mother's primary caregiver. And this was the first time in my young life that I had ever, number one, witnessed firsthand true human suffering and felt that suffering myself. And number two, the first time I'd lived in a completely selfless way. I was so driven about my own goals and so wrapped up in what I wanted to achieve for me and for my own resume and getting ahead in the business world. And this was the first time I lived completely outside of myself. And it was the greatest challenge, but also the greatest privilege of my life. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever experienced, was living completely in service of another human being. And I knew through that experience that God's purpose for me here on this earth was to live a life of service, to continue my mother's philanthropy and hopefully expand her legacy and to one day take it to a whole new level. And that's what I have been striving to do every single day for the last 19 years.
And been doing it really well. And I think it's really coming through you. I mean, one of the things about philanthropy is it can be selfish in a way because of really how much joy, right, that you can gain as a result. And so, you know, one thing that you don't know about Laura, which I recently found out, and you saw her dancing as she came out here.
I love dancing.
Is they have dance parties every day at their office, which is fantastic.
Which is one of the great things about being in charge. Mandatory dance parties.
So I would encourage that for everyone here.
It's actually something that's part of my interview process for new hires. Like, if they make it through all 5 levels of interviews, my very last question, deadpan face, is, so how do you feel about workplace dancing? And if they completely own that they've got some moves, they're in.
So next time we're going to do this panel at your office, maybe I bet some people have some really killer moves there.
Yeah, and I've got some sick dance mixes that I have made.
So that's great. And I also love that your foundation is Laugh, because
I know. How perfect is that?
It's perfect for you.
Yeah.
It's great. And how should we be thinking about the notion of philanthropy? Like, how do you define it?
Well, I define philanthropy in a way that's perhaps a bit different than how we've been honed to traditionally think about philanthropy. I define a philanthropist as anyone who gives anything, whether it's time, expertise, passion, networks, compassion, dollars, in any amount to positively transform our world. And I think this definition is a redefinition, and I felt the need to create a new definition for philanthropy because I felt like it had become something so inaccessible even to me as an individual when I first embarked on my life of service. And the reality is the only thing that you need to have to be a philanthropist is generosity. Yeah. And it's important that people reframe their own identity as a social change maker in this democratized way. Because the reality is, whether you walk for a cure or you create a fundraising campaign on Facebook or Charity Water for your birthday, or you volunteer at hospice, or you participate in a hackathon, you are a philanthropist. Now in the 21st century, particularly because of how technology is democratizing access to participation, there is this enormous, nearly endless spectrum of what it means to be a philanthropist. And so we need to be owning the fact that if we live our generosity through even any action, we are philanthropists.
It takes some of the mystery and the mystique, I think, out of it. That's right. We have 100 venture capitalists that are with us today. We have a lot of business people. And I remember about 5 years ago going on a little tour in Silicon Valley, actually, because I was like, we need to take the mystery out of it, and we need to make it
You didn't visit me on that tour.
I didn't know you. I just knew of you.
I knew of you. I was intimidated by you. So
well, I needed you. I actually needed you on this tour.
I needed you more.
Here is what happened, is I started with the venture capitalists, and I said, we need to make this part of the business process, and there's a real role for you to play. And they said, well, go talk to the attorneys, actually. So then I went and talked to the attorneys, and the attorney said, well, actually, I think you need to talk to the entrepreneurs. And then the entrepreneur said, well, you need to talk to the venture capitalists. So I found myself in this kind of vicious circle, and people were kind of deferring to the next group to make a difference.
So this was before Andreessen Horowitz was created.
That's right. And unprecedented, I think, what they've done with their philanthropy. So, tell the business people, the venture capitalists that are here, why should they care? And what can they do? What is their role?
Okay, so how many of you here are venture capitalists? And
they're hiding.
I know, you guys, own
it's okay.
Own it. I'm married to one. I love venture capitalists.
They're hiding on this side.
And how many of you are entrepreneurs? Okay, so for those of you who just raised your hand, you're going to have to stay here probably through next Thursday because I have so many reasons why this is critically important. So we're living in a whole new world than we were even 10 years ago. 10 years ago, the corporate sector, government, and the social sector were three distinct, relatively siloed entities. And now we literally cannot talk about solving any social problem without addressing all three sectors simultaneously. And I'm going to come back to that fact towards the end of this answer and hopefully further on in our conversation as we dive more into corporate philanthropy. But when I was at Stanford Business School in the mid-90s, there were only a few companies who were firmly committed to giving back. And we are seeing a fundamental 180-degree turn in the importance of corporate philanthropy and corporate social responsibility. Okay, so first, let me just map out baseline a baseline overview of corporate philanthropy and why it's unique in general, and then I want to dive into why it's not just a benefit for society at this point, but rather a necessity to be successful as a company in today's world. Okay, so corporations are unique in the philanthropic sector. They're unique because they have a set of stakeholders and assets and incentives to give. Stakeholders, assets, and incentives that we as individuals and that institutional foundations don't have.
That's right.
And I believe actually that the very best corporate philanthropy is philanthropy that benefits not only society but also benefits the corporation. Because if it's benefiting the corporation, there's more likelihood that it's going to do more of it. So I'm firmly of the belief that corporate philanthropy should be completely aligned with its business strategy.
Yeah.
So corporations have this whole host of stakeholders. They have their employees, they have their investors, they have the customers who are buying their products, they have their verticals with whom they work, they have the individuals who live in the communities in which they operate. They have society at large.
They're partners.
Yeah, they're partners. Yeah, it's never ending, all the like the entire ecosystem around any one given corporation. Yeah. And then corporations also have, when we think about corporate philanthropy, and there was about $15 billion of corporate philanthropy last year, divided roughly a third between corporate foundations, cash gifts, and in-kind resources or gifts of products.
Stayed flat. Did not like that.
No, did not.
In a good
did
economy.
not increase. Was flat with the year before, which is crazy town.
That's right.
Given what's happening in the economy, so and crazy town given the stats I'm about to share. But so corporations we're measuring corporate philanthropy by these relatively quantitative hard data elements, but the reality is, corporations have the ability to give so much more than money, and often it's those assets that are infinitely more valuable. So they have their employee workforce, they have their ridiculous R&D, they have their manufacturing capability, they have their distribution networks, they have their financial expertise, they have their legal teams. They have their amazing products or technological savvy.
Yeah.
Exactly. Marketing, social media presence, etc. And so when we think about these assets and we think about all of the different stakeholders, we can combine those to consider what are the unique ways that corporations benefit from engaging in philanthropy. So when we think about those in the abstract, we're talking about things like customer loyalty, brand equity, employee acquisition and retention, and ultimately those things and so many other things, including reputation in the community, government relations, et cetera, are going to lead to a better bottom line. Now, that's your overview of corporate philanthropy. I think what we're not thinking about enough is how we are in the still relatively nascent stages of a new generation of corporate leaders and how this generation of corporate leaders is thinking about a new generation of both customers and workforce members. So, in my opinion, Mark Benioff represents the quintessential, the paradigmatic 21st century CEO because he is visionary enough to realize that innovation is equally as important as philanthropy, as creating positive social impact. And a lot of CEOs and a lot of venture capitalists aren't seeing that benefit right now. But it's actually brilliant visionary, a brilliant vision on Mark B's, I call him Mark B, because I'm married to Mark A. Mark C is one of my best friends. These are like, this is like my triumvirate of Marks that I surround myself with very happily. All extraordinary philanthropists and corporate leaders. But so Mark B is realizing the importance of these two things, a tantamount importance. And this is critically important when we think about the power of millennials. So there are 80 million millennials here in the US. Now, according to recent studies, 72% of millennials say that working for a company that is committed to creating social impact and them being able to help create social impact in their jobs was critically important to their personal happiness. 64% of millennials say they would much rather work for a job that they love and be paid $40,000 than work in a job that they find boring and be paid $100,000. Now, 83% of millennials made a financial gift last year, and 73% of millennials volunteered their time. Over half of millennials said they would never even consider working for a company that was socially irresponsible. 79% of millennials say that if they learn that a company is committed to philanthropy and social change, they are infinitely more likely to purchase their product. Okay, so in 3 years, millennials are going to be making the majority of consumer decisions in this country. And in 6 years, in 2020, millennials will make up just about 50% of the workforce. So philanthropy actually right now isn't a corporate benefit or an add-on any longer. It's a necessity. It is the way that companies are going to not only acquire but also retain a new generation of customers and a new generation of employees. So I really don't know what could be a better argument for corporate social impact than that.
And we found that very true in two particular areas, with engineers, who are in very high demand, and with executives, actually. And, I hear over and over again that it is a core reason people started at Salesforce. And we just were at a recent executive offsite, and they threw up a slide that said in 2020, Salesforce will have 50% of its workforce will have been born after 1990.
Yeah, case in point.
Right. And I think most of us are
Those are the millennials.
That's right. And I think that it is interesting because another charitable statistic I recently saw was the millennial generation, the 73% who gave money and time last year, gave more, actually, on a per capita basis than wealthier Americans. So I think that there is this real movement happening around the democratization of philanthropy.
Absolutely.
And I'm curious of what you're kind of seeing in that area, because we're seeing it in our company, and we're seeing it sort of across other companies. And I also want you to talk about Airbnb, both of those two concepts, because I think part of the reason that I was very upset about the flat number of corporate philanthropy last year, although I think people are getting smarter about using their assets in different ways, and it may not be cash. So if you can, just share with people some examples of companies and how they're using their assets, and then also kind of what you're seeing around this democratization idea.
Yeah, okay, so two totally different topics, but I'll start with the first. And I think your point about engineers is really important, because how many of you are engineers? I'm raising my hand like I'm an engineer, and I'm totally pretending that I am right now. Yeah. We're both coders, too. We can code with you after this.
Yeah, code.org. Yeah. Everyone can do it.
Code.us, us. Okay. All right. So for engineers, and so this, I actually love this question, because it's taking the corporate philanthropy topic that we just discussed and getting a little bit more micro with it. Yeah. So I think there are really two core, or two base ways to think about it. One is for a new generation of entrepreneurs, and then the other is for a new generation of intrapreneurs. So I think that all of you who are engineers are both, in many cases, particularly here in Silicon Valley. So entrepreneurship, I think that what's so exciting about living right now, I'm not a day passes when I'm literally not nearing spontaneous combustion about the fact that we get to live in this world right now in the middle of the greatest center of innovation that's happened in history. Yep. Like de Medicis and the Renaissance, child's play compared to what's going on here in Silicon Valley. And I have 2 degrees in art history, so I definitely know what I'm talking about. That's right. Okay, so we're living in this moment in time where we're seeing this unprecedented generational shift. And we're seeing it in this new generation of entrepreneurs, this new generation of leaders and actors that are the second half of Gen X, which includes ourselves, and Gen Y. Yeah. And what we're seeing are companies that have social benefit inherently built into their missions. Right. And that's at the more macro level. That's at the entrepreneurial level. Yeah. So let's look at some of the examples of companies that are doing that. Yeah. Okay, so 4 come to mind. The first 2 are Airbnb and Lyft. So these are companies that have really created what's known as the sharing economy. Yep. And what is so powerful about the sharing economy, does everybody know, everyone here knows what Airbnb and Lyft are, yes?
I think how many people are staying at Airbnb?
Yeah, how many people are staying? Love that. And how many of you have been lifted? I just made up that term right now. Okay, so you are all familiar with Airbnb and Lyft, but these are essentially enabling ordinary people to monetize otherwise stagnant assets. These are companies that are driving individual economic empowerment in a way we've never seen before. So that's incredibly powerful. And I think the social good component of those 2 companies is frequently lost in this media frenzy around what is Uber's latest valuation.
Right.
Based on revenues, not so much. That being neither here nor there. Then we have companies like Nation Builder, which essentially exists to help individuals create and grow and manage large communities. So granted, this can be everything from you managing your Salesforce employee volunteer army of good, or it can be for a grassroots activist nonprofit staffed by the volunteer founder who's using this as an opportunity to create, say, for example, a new social movement in their community in rural Iowa to stop bullying against LGBT teenagers. Yeah. So what Nation Builder does is it provides a website creation tool, a database to manage volunteers' profiles and level of engagement, tools to communicate with everyone. And some of Nation Builder's campaigns have literally taken on a global scale. And then we have companies who are using some of these incredibly exciting and disruptive new technologies, like Airware. Yeah. And Airware provides what I like to call drones for good. Yeah. So Airware provides drones that help deliver essential life-saving medications to remote villages in rural Africa. Or they're also partnering with a nonprofit to help prevent anti-poaching for rhinoceri. Is that the plural of rhinoceroses? I love it, rhinoceri.
Inventing a whole new
yeah, it's total. There are going to be so many new words in the Oxford English Dictionary just after this fireside chat alone. But Airware is essentially taking this technology that's getting a huge amount of national backlash and utilizing it to create positive social change in a way we've never seen before. So that's from the entrepreneurial perspective. And then the entrepreneurial perspective, and this is something that's equally exciting, is we're seeing so many innovative new use cases for existing technologies. So take mobile phones, for example. You can go into some developing countries and into some local communities or villages. There is no clean water. There's no electricity. They don't have access to basic sanitation, but they do have cell phones. Yep. So Kenya, for example, 70% of the adult population in Kenya uses a technology, a mobile technology called M-Pesa. M-Pesa provides, and this is a for-profit company, M-Pesa provides what is essentially a branchless banking service that provides access to basic financial services such as savings and loan, and enables its users to use their cell phone minutes as currency, so they don't have to worry about the insecurity of paper dollars. Yep. But what's so powerful about M-Pesa is because it does not have to bear the costs of having physical branches, it is dramatically collapsing the cost of basic financial services, and it can charge an infinitely lower interest rate because its costs are so low. Yeah. And when you think about the fact that 2.5 billion people do not have access to basic financial services, and you think about the fact that somebody had this vision to layer on to an existing technology this platform to enable the significant reduction of 5 out of the 17 key determinants of poverty, this one product integration is literally saving lives and bringing people to a place of economic stability and sustainability in the palm of their hands. That's crazy town.
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
that did
right.
not exist 10 years ago.
Right.
Like, who is not incredibly excited about that? It's
Right?
amazing.
It
So
is amazing.
if you work at a gaming company, you can have a product that somebody buys, and all those dollars can go, you can be doing, I'm just brainstorming, literally spur of the moment here. I only know this because my beloved is completely, let's just say it's passionate, not addicted to video games. But let's say
like my 13-year-old.
hypothetically, somebody was playing Grand Theft Auto, and instead of, well, actually, I don't really know how this works. Let's say you have to buy a weapon or something in a video game. Let's say every time you buy a weapon, instead of purchasing that gun, those dollars go to gun control.
Right.
Or you can put on your homepage something that your company is passionate about and match your consumers or your users dollar per dollar up to a specific amount. Like, there are literally, with technology, there are endless opportunities to create good.
And I hope, Ken, you're taking notes from Zynga. I have a good friend from Zynga who's here, who...
Zynga's been
amazing
in this regard, yes.
Amazing.
Mark
And last
fan.
year or 2 years ago, by the sale of candy canes in Farmville, over the holidays, we raised, $1 million in like 2 weeks. So I think it's really powerful.
It is.
What is happening.
And it's endlessly powerful.
Endlessly powerful.
This is just the very beginning.
Yeah. And this whole leapfrogging with technology is really cool. I was in Kenya myself a couple years ago. I was like one of the only people who that had cash. I felt like a loser because I had coins and I was playing.
I don't think you're a loser. I think you're a winner.
But the girls I was with had to pay their electric bills, and they did it through M-Pesa, right? And so it's just very powerful. And I'm seeing it with like Palantir and Splunk and Twilio, and I think that just people in this room should be thinking about using their products for good. And I think that is next generation philanthropy. It's not that it's never been done before, but the technology revolution and what it's enabling, even back to Airbnb and being able to spin up houses for people that need shelter in disasters. I mean, it's brilliant.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And we have to remember that with this new generation and with millennials becoming such a powerful force in terms of consumerism and workforce, we have to remember that it's not a benefit anymore. It is a necessity. And it's really incumbent upon every single one of us to set a new standard of not asking if a technology can be used for social good, but rather how. Yeah.
And I think like a necessity, not like an obligation, but like as a privilege.
I think as a privilege, but I also believe it will become inherent to corporate evolution and survival over time.
Yeah, I think that's right. So for everyone that is of the millennial generation or not, like me.
You're right on the cusp, though. We are both like 6 months off.
3 months.
3
really.
is what I meant to say. 3 months off.
Like, what can we do? Like, I think there's this, and like, I want to move to Giving 2.0 because I learned so much in this book, actually. And we have this book, by the way, for everyone. We ordered, you can come by the Foundation Zone in the Expo. It's a fantastic book.
And you're giving it away for free.
And we're giving it away for free because that is how we roll.
Present.
Yes.
Christmas in October. I'm putting up our decorations tomorrow. I love Christmas too.
So tell us a little bit about what you wanted to accomplish with that book, what you did. I mean, I could go sort of on and on about what I learned about collaboration versus isolation, and there's a lot of things that made a real difference in how we're executing our philanthropy.
Bless you. Thank you.
But can you share with folks here, they'll read it after.
Yeah.
But yeah, what did you learn through that process, and what was it all about for you? How could you kind of summarize that big book in a cliff note?
Yes, love it. Okay, so like every organization and resource and product that I've created in my 18 years, I meant 18 months since I graduated from college. Everything I've created is based on consumer empathy. So I have made a career out of solving the problems that I have. Solving the problems that I have, knowing I want to live a life of service and volunteerism and social entrepreneurship. And yes, I have the extraordinary privilege of being able to be a financial philanthropist as well as a human and intellectual capital philanthropist. But I essentially created the book that I wish I had had when I lost my angel mother, but had made a lifetime commitment to her, to God, and to myself to live a life of giving. So I created the book I wish I'd had then, but then I also created the book that 15 years into my full-time career as a pracademic, as a teacher and practicer of philanthropy, that I wish I had to prep me for how technology was going to revolutionize philanthropy and what philanthropy could be in the future. So I created this book based on my own experiences, but also, and I would say even more importantly than my experiences, literally I had been keeping a record of what ultimately became thousands of questions that other individuals had asked me over a decade and a half, and I set out to answer as many of those questions as possible in this book too. And so the book is not only a portfolio of practical ideas and tools and ways to implement this roadmap of shifting your giving from sympathetic to strategic and reactive to proactive and isolated to collaborative. But also, I saw this fundamental need to which we alluded earlier, this fundamental need to democratize what a philanthropist is and to make it necessarily as accessible as it actually was, as opposed to furthering this notion of inaccessibility, which so many of the other books I had read promoted because they only told stories of billionaires and multimillionaires. So it was really about those two key objectives, and then just helping people walk their own journey, providing a framework, providing a set of questions to ask, and introducing people to my own market-based approach. And I'm happy to elaborate on either of those.
I was going to say, like, what are some questions that people should be thinking about, asking themselves?
So for me personally, I will not even give an hour of my time to an organization unless I can determine not just an answer, but a great answer to the following three questions. Number one, how will I know if my resources, in whatever form or size they take, specifically translate into social good. That is, what are the benchmarks or short-term, intermediate-term, and long-term indicators that will prove that social impact was created? Number two, is this gift the single best bang for my philanthropic buck at this time? And the reason that that question is so important, and you may think, oh, well, just because I'm giving to this disaster relief organization right now doesn't mean I can't also give to my local Boys and Girls Club or through Donors Choose to a classroom in my hometown. But the fact that every single gift you make is a decision to not give to countless other nonprofits. So you better be dang well sure that whatever resource you're investing will ultimately translate into powerful social change. And then finally, the third question is, what have I learned from making this gift that ideally I can virally share with others? Because one of the hugest problems that we have in the philanthropic sector is that we don't talk about what we're learning. Occasionally we'll mention, oh, I gave a grant to, or I made a gift to this organization, and I had a fantastic experience, and this number of people were served, and this intervention strategy actually works, and I feel fabulous about it. That's really the exception, not the norm. So if you do talk about philanthropy, you're probably going to say something positive because you don't want to bash people who have good intentions but aren't necessarily creating social good. But in reality, when we don't talk about the organizations that aren't actually creating the social change that they claim to be creating, we're essentially every year potentially wasting tens of billions of dollars.
That's right.
And we're creating this incessant reinvention of the philanthropic wheel because we're not sharing the information for better and for worse.
I think that is a really good point. So just to kind of summarize on the three questions is, what is the organization's social impact, short, medium, long term? Mm-hmm. How are they measuring it in terms of giving that dollar over giving it to some other organization? And third is sharing learning socially.
Yes, exactly.
I think that is really powerful. I was at there's lots of philanthropy conferences, and I keep, everyone that I'm on the advisory council for, I keep saying, can we do a panel on failure? Yeah. And nobody's done it. And I just think that it's really powerful, and that to your point, it needs to be part of the process because the 5 venture capitalists who admitted to being here.
No.
No.
Own your gloriousness.
Right? We know that you must have failure to have massive innovation, right? They're saying no failure in their portfolio.
Yeah, well, it's a part of creating new things.
That's right.
We all fail.
Yeah.
I have made gifts I am not proud of.
Yeah.
And I am not going to talk about them on this stage right now.
But you'll be on my panel.
Because we don't have time.
But you would be on my panel.
I'm so on your panel.
Great. So
should we both coordinate our outfits again?
We should. Black is safe, I think.
It's so safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that what inspired the MOOC? Is this notion of learning? So Laura I was honored to be interviewed for it a couple weeks ago. It was a great team, by the way. And the whole, back to the sort of theme of democratization, we're seeing that in higher education with MOOCs. Was that part of what was behind why you did that MOOC, to talk about learnings and share all of that information in a kind of more of a social, accessible way?
Yeah, well, sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
No, that was my question.
Yeah, so absolutely. That was one of the core reasons why I did it, or why I'm doing it. It actually just started a few days ago. Everyone in this audience can still sign up. Just go to laaf.org, LAAF.org. It's basically, so MOOCs, I'm sure all of you know this, but they're massively open online courses. So mine is a Stanford University course that I'm doing through the Coursera platform. It's called Giving 2.0, like my book. And MOOCs are one of the crazy, thrilling ways that technology is fundamentally disrupting industries. So what MOOCs are enabling us to do right now is essentially break down the physical walls of the classroom and break down the financial barriers to access to education. So my MOOC is for free. It's 6 weeks long. And it's essentially a greatest hits iTunes playlist or Spotify playlist of my 15 years of teaching, plus 25 videos from world-renowned philanthropy and business leaders from all over the globe. So I have students, and hopefully some of you will become students, if not all of you, as well. But I have lifelong learners who are literally coming from Bulgaria and Germany and India and Wichita and Sunnyvale,
like Bulgaria,
which is similar to Bulgaria culturally, but some very minor sociological differences. But essentially, MOOCs are the most scalable way to democratize access to higher education and democratize access to some of the most important research and learning that is being created that typically only students from Harvard or MIT or Princeton or Stanford have access to. So what my students are doing with me and with the amazing leaders, including yourself, who are speaking, over a 6-week period, they're learning a new market-based approach for giving, the market-based approach that I use for all of my philanthropic endeavors. And they're using it in a real-time experiential education format, competitively assessing nonprofits of their choice, and then all my students have the ability to propose those nonprofits to receive up to $100,000 of grants from the incredible Doris Buffett's Learning by Giving Foundation. And students will also come out of the 6 weeks with a personal, tailored, strategic plan for your own giving moving ahead. So even 5 years ago, this simply wasn't possible. 3 years ago, we started to see it happening with STEM and machine learning and artificial intelligence. And now we're seeing it in philanthropy too. And this is the whole purpose of my foundation, and my primary focus right now is utilizing technology platforms to democratize access to philanthropy education, because everybody should have it for free.
And it's free.
It's free.
And my whole team, is like signed up for it.
Christmas in October, yet again.
It's great and it's new. And who are some of the other 25 leaders?
Yeah, so Darren Walker, who's the CEO of the Ford Foundation. Henry Timms, who co-founded Giving Tuesday, who runs 92nd Street Y. Scott Harrison of Charity Water. Holden Karnofsky of Give Well. Paul Barres, former CEO of the Hewlett Foundation. I mean, you name it.
Yeah, so I would just encourage everyone to get involved, whether it's through the MOOC, which is really an incredibly powerful tool, whether it's through picking up Laura's book and figuring out your answers to the 3 questions that she outlines and the market-based approach.
Donating cans to the Salesforce can campaign. I brought 12.
Thank you.
This is a healthy option.
I brought organic stuff too. I'm really glad to see healthy choice. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I actually ate some of the canned food and I was really desperate last week.
You're not alone, my friend. Microwaving skills are the limit of my kitchen capacity.
So thank you, Laura, for being here. There's a lot that you can do in a million different ways. So my sort of final thoughts to you, and I'll just ask the same of Laura, is, get involved, get engaged. You don't need to be a billionaire. You just need to be have a generous heart. And I would imagine everybody in this room has a generous heart. So there's a lot of resources that this amazing woman has provided for you to help focus you in that area and educate me and educate you as well. So any closing thoughts from you?
Just to reiterate your critically important point that the only thing you need to have to be a philanthropist is generosity. Whether it is an hour of your time, whether it is doing a pro bono consulting project for a nonprofit, whether you're creating a social issue awareness building campaign for your through your social network. I believe that it is ultimately what we do for others that defines who we are. And each of us, we wouldn't be here if we were not blessed beyond compare. Every single one of you has an extraordinary portfolio of blessings and assets and talents and expertise that can literally be transformational, not only to a nonprofit, but infinitely more importantly, to the people that they and we aspire to serve. So go forth and be blissfully philanthropic. Thank you.
Thanks so much.